into the Zoom room we go, where we have Republican Senators Minority Leader Senator Chris Duenas, and he is joined by his colleagues on the minority side of things in the 36th Guam Legislature, Senator Tello Taitigui and Senator Joanne Brown. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Mason and Sabina. And she's not here today. So
She's not,
and the KUAM family. Good morning.
Let me just get this release up. So I believe Senator Taitigui, this is your bill, right? This $660 million. Hold on, trying to find it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Senators Taitigui, Ada Duenas Brown, and Blas use budget process to account for $600 million plus in American Rescue Plan Act funds. The gist of it, Senator, if you could.
Yep, this bill was introduced by myself, but also supported by my colleagues, as you mentioned, Senator Ada, Senator Minority Leader Chris Duenas, Senator Joanne Brown, and Frank Jr. And basically, it's a three-parter. And it's a law that currently exists in the book, which is public law. What is that public law? Title 5, Chapter 4, 4109. And the bill basically makes an amendment to include it in the event there's any additional revenue coming up above the appropriation of 3% higher than what we've estimated in appropriation, that the budget be modified to include those additional spendings and require the governor to adjust that and let us know where she plans to put some of this funding. It's the same way the law right now currently basically requires for refinancing, a realignment, fiscal realignment in the event projected revenues go below 3%. So, but there's nothing in that legislation that says in the event additional money, and we all know that 600 million plus funding is coming to the government of Guam. And we talk about transparency and accountability. We'd like to see that before she spends the funding. You know, that money was given, the federal funding was given to the people of Guam. And I think it's incumbent upon the governor to show us exactly how she is spending that money. Now, we've been hearing tidbits in the media and when she has her press releases coming out. And of course, one major one, which, you know, I'm totally for, I support, is the $300 million she set aside for a new hospital. But the $300 million question right now is that has that money already been approved by the federal government to spend on a new hospital? And that question hasn't been answered as of yet. So I think that's important to know too, because, you know, Chris, what makes a bigger point, and I'll stop there to allow my colleagues also to bring something up, but what's important here is that if the governor plans on incorporating in the FY21 budget additional funding to an agency, for an example, provide them with $1 million or $10 million for that agency in this fiscal year, well, then what happens to that money that's been appropriated by the legislature?
Right.
The governor has 15% transfer authority. Now, she might have handcuffs on the federal government funding, and but if she uses that, you know, and puts it into an agency, and then we find out that agency doesn't need the funding that we appropriated, she can easily transfer that money for something else, and we wouldn't know about it until later.
Yeah.
So this is basically ahead of time, letting people of Guam know where that money is going to be going, and like to hear what she has to say on that.
Let me just get in here real quick. So, case in point, former Governor Gutierrez has come on this show a couple times. He's the GVB president and the czar of permitting. And he basically said that he was going to ask Auntie Lulubelle for $20 million out of this American Rescue Plan to, I believe it was to market Guam, you know, as we reopen tourism, or it was a very general description of what this money was going to be used for. Then the governor came on, and I said, hey, Gov, you know, Uncle Carl said you're going to give him $20 million out of the American Rescue Plan. She was like, yes, I am. Yes, I am, Bobek. So that being said, if GVB is getting an additional 20 million on top of whatever they're getting, and this is happening across the board with different agencies, is this bill kind of how you plan to address those instances?
Yeah, absolutely. It basically tells us where she's planning to put this funding, and then we can adjust. You know, it's been brought up that, oh, well, we can do the adjustment in the budget bill for FY 2021. We can make those adjustments, but technically we can't because we don't have the authority to appropriate any of these federal funds. In some states, it's being questioned, like New Mexico. You find that the governor and the legislature is actually working together with these ARP, I call it ARP, American Rescue Plan Act, ARP money that's coming in. And some of these legislatures are actually claiming they have the authority to do it, but Guam is unique. It clearly states that the governor has the authority on how she spends this funding, federal funding coming in. So with that being said, she also has that transfer authority. So whatever funding she puts in there, we cannot spend the money as a legislature. We already know that. This is about holding her accountable for that federal funding and not finding out later on, a year later, how she spent it, or sending us a report. You know, Bill 333 that was passed in the last legislature, vetoed by her and ultimately passed, overridden by the legislature. She did provide us the report that we requested, which was very late, but unfortunately it wasn't itemized. She just said this amount of money went to public health, this went to GPD, this went to, but it didn't tell us to spend it on what. It just went to that agency.
Yeah, but you guys have kind of allowed these circumstances to exist by not really pressuring the governor on this. And I mean, I know that was last term or whatever, but I feel like, you know, you give an inch, right? They take a mile. Well, the governor's like 100 miles away. And now you guys are stuck here playing catch up.
You know, Chris, I have to comment because this is an unusual circumstance that we're in as a result of this pandemic. And certainly it's the source and the reason why these additional recovery funds are coming to Guam. And they're coming not for the governor, obviously, or for the legislature. I mean, they're coming here to assist our people through this very challenging time. You know, it is kind of surprising that we would have to legislation like this forth rather than the governor putting forth the plan herself, because she's in a unique position. The fact that she has this amount of federal funding that's being provided, where normally it would be, you know, in our system of government within the three branches, that it would be the legislature that would appropriate funding. You know, we shouldn't hear piecemeal about one, you know, if it's former Governor Gutierrez at GVB saying, oh, I'm going to get, you know, I want 20 million, and the governor's coming on and saying, oh, I'm going to give you 20 million. I mean, that isn't how we should be listening to this process. There should be a plan put forth so that we collectively as a community know where the community money is going. If not, certainly, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of Senator Teitigui in putting this bill forth and allowing us to support her in it, so that we have a mechanism under which it becomes public of how these funds are intended to be spent. It also allows us, more importantly, to determine how do we fund the government of Guam this upcoming fiscal year. I mean, I can't account why in the past the majority of senators, you know, have simply allowed or rubber stamped this process and not engaged in their responsibility to hold everyone's feet to the fire. Why that hasn't happened, I mean, that's the reason why, you know, a number of us here have been added to the list. Certainly, I know that's why Senator and I are here, is because we didn't see that level of check and balance that should have and should always exist in the government, regardless of who's in which branch of government, which is the majority in the legislature, which party is in the executive branch. I mean, that's what ensures the greater transparency that we all keep talking about. But, you know, we hear a lot of talk, but we don't see information being brought forth by the administration to the people of Guam of what those priorities are. And it's a challenging time. I don't think we can look at the perspective that, oh, we have all this money and we can throw it here and throw it there and throw it wherever. This is temporary. And my fear, and I know a number of my colleagues share this, certainly Senator Tello and Senator Chris do, is we're concerned about what comes after. We're concerned about our ability as an economy to bridge over with the current cost of operations of the government of Guam to bring critical services to our people, and the time that hopefully our economy is going to recover. So I don't think we can just look at this as a windfall to, like it's play money and let's just, we'll decide, the governor will decide where this money's going. And, we're going to argue the separation of powers and authority of the executive over this because, the federal government's given that to the governor. That isn't how a transparent, responsive government should be. There shouldn't be anything hidden with regards to putting forth the recommendations and engaging with us in the leadership on how's the best way to do this so that we can ensure the critical things do need to be funded and other areas perhaps that really are in need in our government that have been ignored in the past because we haven't had enough money. I mean, those are the areas we could work with to strengthen those areas so that we can support our people. But, the fact that we have to put this bill forth is really unfortunate because that information has not been forthcoming. And I don't hear it being provided either to you in the media to provide it to the public. And it certainly hasn't been provided directly to us as members of the legislature.
Minority Leader Senator Duenas, let me ask you this. And you're right, Senator Brown, is totally unprecedented, rapidly evolving, one-of-a-kind situation. But what it's created is the governor has $600 million plus. The amount keeps changing. But I feel like the set of circumstances that's been created is she doesn't need the legislature. She's running her own GovGuam. Right? And so that's where this is really coming down. It's like, hey, you guys are like, no, we're supposed to be the appropriating thing. And you're right. I mean, they had a whole deal last term where she had said, yeah, you have no authority to decide where this money goes at all. But then they did a bill with Senator Shelton where they decided where the federal money would go. So it's inconsistent, but I see it for what it is. And I feel like what they've got is a $600 million blank check to bankroll all the great re-election stuff. And meanwhile, you guys are kind of shut out of it. I mean,
Yeah, Chris and Jason, and, always enjoy being on the link. Thank you to KUM and your team. I couldn't agree more. And I couldn't agree more. I thank the author, Senator Tydegui, and of course the comments by her and Senator Brown. Those are all just on point. This bill basically represents transparency, accountability, and check and balance. It's everything the three of us ran on, and it's everything that we need going forward to be able to hold the administration accountable to take care of our people. I was so glad that Senator Tydegui and Senator Brown were some of the greatest supporters when I introduced Bill 11. And it was along the same lines. It was to make sure that the governor recognized that the legislature is the policy-making body. It is the people's house where we make policy for our people to best effectuate policy for our people. Today, Chris, we see that the judiciary now went from reducing hours and possible furloughs to considering increments and considering, issues of levelizing their budget. And rightly so, because they too recognize that the governor has this windfall from the federal government to do a number of different things. Spur our economy, backfill our government to make sure we can take care of critical areas, emphasis on critical areas. And I consider the judiciary a critical area. And so now we see a lot of this transformation, but we see no plan. So I'm glad that Senator Tydegui and the rest of us have come forward and said, Governor, we realize that the federal government has transferred this money to the government of Guam. And traditionally under those circumstances, if it's not a budget from the general fund, it is within your purview to expend those funds. But this is not a normal situation, like Senator Brown said. This is a situation where our island and our economy has been devastated and decimated by the shutdowns, lockdowns, and the conditions that exist. So it's not a normal windfall to the government of Guam. It is designed to, first of all, the first plan that came through was designed to make sure that our families and our people can survive by making sure we got payments to our people that substituted for the loss of wages and jobs. And now we have money to make sure that we can rebuild our economy and take care of our government. So as far as I'm concerned, and I think that Senator Tallo and Senator Joanne joined me on this, this is not a normal circumstance. And it's not a normal situation where the governor can sit back and go, I'll send you my plan when I'm good and ready. I think the legislature now is right to step forward and say, well, Governor, because that plan is going to include, and you've already been on the record, picking and choosing which agencies you've decided to give money to, well, in that situation, then you're dealing with the general fund and you're dealing with the policy-making arm of the body. The other thing is, and I think that Senator Tello and Senator Joanne have heard a lot of this as well, we've been getting a lot of government employees coming up to us and telling us, man, there's been quite a bit of hiring in our agencies. Maybe it's pandemic related. Maybe it's something that's to continue to, help with the emergency that we're in. But the thing is, Chris, is at the end of the day, these employees more than likely will have to be absorbed by the general fund. We need to now get serious about going by agency and quickly move into the budget process along with this bill that Senator Teidigwe and our team has introduced, so that we understand what are the current staffing patterns. What will be the staffing patterns? Are we really backing up the critical areas of our government to make sure that that's what we're doing with this funding? And so I think it's no longer an argument, Chris, that this funding is subject to at least consultation and consideration from the legislature. One more thing I want to announce today, and I'm going to ask Senator Brown and Senator Teidigwe to join me on this, is that the governor's declaration that she's setting aside $300 million for the hospital, which I think we all support, cannot just be some declaration. I'm preparing a piece of legislation, a bill, that will have that money transferred to the hospital trust fund. In the 12th legislature, the hospital trust fund was created to be administered under GITA. It was the design of that 12th legislature to have money set aside for hospital needs and a new hospital in the eventuality. In my research, not very much money has ever been placed in that fund. So I'm going to call on the governor to step up and put that $300 million in the hospital trust fund, because we don't need that money just sitting around in a bank somewhere or somewhere else. If we have a government of Guam account that's designed to hold that money to say we are committed to building this hospital, then put it in the hospital trust fund, and that's a bill that you'll see coming out next week. And I hope my colleagues will join me.
Well, now you're really going to get in trouble.
I'm pretty good at getting in trouble.
Yeah, so this is the governor's, but you're right, Senator Brown, it was really curious to me. It just kind of like came out of nowhere. When the governor came out and said, I'm going to use $300 million to build a new hospital, and I'm going to do it at Eagles Field. Well, that kind of seems like it's out the window, because there's original landowners involved. That's excess military lands. And they were just going to give the original landowners the shaft and build this new hospital. And now we had Lillian on yesterday, and she said they're looking at a few other places, Eagles Field, Oka, I believe Nimitz Hill. I want to say that there was maybe a couple other, but they've narrowed it down to a few different. But you're right, this is like accelerating so quickly without a lot of input from, senators, the public.
Well, actually, Chris, this actually has been studied for quite some time. Okay. It started off with Senator Dennis Rodriguez with a report that extended about 230 pages, in which I read through, and then continuing with the legislation that I created a task force for the hospital to continue the efforts. A lot of the the planning and the staging and the ideas how to fund this was already implemented. Not implemented, put into place, right. On paper, on a white paper. And it is just about finding a location. But like I said, the $300 million question is, where has it been given approval by the federal government that this money can be used for a hospital? And she talks about giving funding to the tourism, to Governor Gutierrez at GVB, but where is it that allows us and how to spend this funding? Where's the approval there? When we asked, I think it was Bibi Amar during a session on Committee of the Whole, we had asked, well, is there any word yet on how we're able to spend this funding? And he says, we're still reviewing, we're still looking over where we can spend this money. But they're not engaging us. This is the opportunity to engage. It's the check and balances of our government. Like Senator Brown said, and we're not being able to have that type of watchful eye if the governor is just wanting to do everything on her own. I mean, what do they say? That comment of, you attract bees with honey, and she's definitely not offering us any opportunity. Now, I can't say that for, maybe the OFB director, or the oversight chair of OFB, if they're having their own little powwows together. I'm not sure of that, but I think it needs to be engaged, because you're looking at a legislature that's 7-8 right now. You're going to need the support of both parties on this legislation, not just one, because we all know that even within their own parties, they have their own issues, and they don't always agree.
We had a comment here. All voters have a right to question all political hires, and we expect clear, concise answers to all of our questions to allow a better understanding of decisions that were made or will be made. But we are made to feel like we have no rights to question anything. Amen, Rosemary.
Wow, that was beautiful, Rosemary. Very beautiful.
Powerful statement.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about hiring. There is hiring going on, and they're giving out $10,000 raises. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
absolutely right. And classified employees, I mean, who have spent their careers working in the government, most of the time when they see this kind of activity is because they're concerned. They understand the solvency of the agency. They understand, that there's limited resources, and what happens, like Senator Brown, constantly the mantra that she has, what happens after? We can have a party right now, but it's going to be a big hangover when we haven't planned. And so first, I think the question is, are these critical employees? We need policemen so badly. We need, our hospital needs to be shored up, and we've been surviving on travel nurses to support our hospital. We know these critical areas that are so short, and if we're going to backfill anything, we need to backfill critical areas and make sure that those shortfalls that have taken place because particularly of this disaster as well, that they are the first to get the resources. And so if we come later on and we start to talk about the government of Guam budget in June and July, and there's 300 new employees, how does that help us to be able to manage the issue? We should be talking about it now. We should be doing agency by agency budget hearings now. So we see what their current staffing pattern is, compare it to last year to see if they've done any recent hiring, and what are their plans going forward. And this is exactly what this bill does, because it's budget in nature. It's come down to us and give us your plan, because the bottom line is any backfilling of agency budgets becomes now the purview of the legislature for appropriation. Because if you're going to supply that agency with that type of budget for whatever mission that you're calling for, you're basically adjusting your executive budget that you've already sent to us, then that now becomes the purview of the legislature. And we want to make sure that it's the critical areas that are going to be funded, and not just we decided we need 10 special project coordinators over here.
No,
that's not going to cut it.
There was a comment here, Senator Duenas. $65,000 a year to post on Facebook for the governor. Exactly. Could have hired 2 nurses for that much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wanted to add though, look at the irony, because certainly, those of us that came from the last administration, we heard the critics in the legislature screaming on high, including an administration that took 2 pay cuts, to get through these challenging times. Could the governor, Governor Calvo, have gone through that and not put that in place? Probably, but he wanted to set the example. And nowadays, while we are, yes, the federal money's coming in, certainly Senator our Congressman Nicholas the other day, relayed, hey, let's be careful with how we move forward, because at least according to him, this is the last round. And yet they're silent. I mean, I don't hear other colleagues in the legislature, including the majority, raising those concerns. The very things that you're saying and the very things that people in our community are seeing and hearing and saying with regards to this is a time to be responsible. This is a time to buckle down. This is a time to be a little bit more conservative to make sure that what money we do have, that we can stretch that through to bridge us, to get us through the challenges. Because if we're just adding on and we're thinking, as you know, Senator Chris mentioned, that we're at a party right now and let's just live it up. You know, the day's coming that we're very concerned about. We're very concerned about it. What it's going to take to get our island and our economy and our community back to where we were in January of last year. Just realizing still the challenges. I mean, this coronavirus has not gone away. We have other jurisdictions around us, including, you know, our source of tourists, that this issue is still a major issue, and it hasn't been fully eradicated here either. We don't know what the next chapter is going to bring. And we should be a lot more conservative. This is not a time to grow the government. This is a time to hold the government responsible and make sure that we are very careful with how we're spending what money we have, because, you know, we don't know what's ahead. It's the uncertainty that lies ahead. And instead now all we hear about is how we're going to spend. We wanted this, but you know, I don't just want a hospital. I want a Cadillac of a hospital. I'm sure we all do, but can our people afford it? Can we sustain it? Are we going to be back in a few years to another deteriorating facility that in a short time we're going to, we got to demolish it, we got to buy new? You know, that's nice, but can we afford all these resources? Can the people of Guam afford what certain people in this government want to give them? But for the rest of the legislature, including those on the other side that are the current majority, to be silent about this, to say nothing. I mean, that's the very thing that encouraged me to run. I know it encourages Senator Chris to run and our former Republican colleagues that served in the past, Senator Frank, Senator Tony. That's the reason why we ran, is because we just were dumbfounded at the lack of check and balance. Because I'll tell you, I remember the screaming and yelling at the legislature attacking the previous administration about these issues. But now when you see it happen on their side, my gosh, it's quiet. It's like it's a normal day in paradise. Who are we're, you know, to even raise these questions? You know, and our people are not, you know, they see what's going on. They know what's going on. And it's almost like, well, too bad, because we're in power. We do what we want. And that's really not why we're here. And that's not our responsibility of why we're here. I mean, we're caretakers for a time. And it shouldn't be a question of, gosh, how fast can we run to take everything we can get while we can get it? That's not why we're here. That's not why we're in elective office, to abuse those capacities that we've been entrusted with on behalf of ensuring that our people are getting the services that they should be getting from our government. But yes, oh my, it's very quiet on the other side. Why aren't they raising these very questions that our people out there are raising?
No, there's like two Democrats who are raising those questions.
Yeah. you know, Chris.
Go ahead, Senator. Got to wrap after this, though. Go ahead.
Okay, Senator Brown makes a great point, and I want to go back to that, because I remember, and Senator Tello knows about this, and we all know, coming from that administration, when you were in a senior staff meeting, don't you complain about the legislature. You got BJ down there. You got Ben down there. You got big dogs down there coming at you. You know what? You have to have an answer. You make sure you have an answer. You make sure you do your job. You make sure we're doing our job at the executive level to make sure that we have answers to those questions. And we welcome that scrutiny, because we worked hard to get the job done. Were we perfect? No. But I'll tell you what, right now, that's exactly what our responsibility is, to do the same thing. There is no free passes when you run for governor. When you run for governor, you get the job, you have the job. And people like us are going to come forward and say, look, we believe that we have a stake in this and we represent the people's interest. And we are going to question, we are going to move for an override on Bill 11. We are going to introduce and hopefully pass this bill. And you're going to work with us because it's for the best interest of the people, because that's what the people have asked us to do.
Right on. Thank you, Senator Tello.
Thank you so much, and to the KUAM family for continuing always to let the people of Guam know what really is going on. And I greatly appreciate that they do watch the legislature, they do watch session, and they know they're very educated on what who's doing what and who's really wanting transparency and accountability within our government. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Minority Leader Senator Joanne, one last question before you go. I wanted an update on this, the bill that you had introduced would bar the hiring of anyone who's been convicted of official misconduct, the Josh Tenorio's Nial bill. What's the
Well,
status
you know,
on that
I'm,
one?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I did speak with Senator Joe San Augustine. You know, if he would report that bill out. I also sent him a formal email request, and I'm hopeful that it will get on our next session agenda. I mean, the hearing for that bill occurred back, I think, around February 24th. You know, and again, my condolences to him and his family on the passing of Speaker Joe T., who I had the honor and the privilege of serving with in the 23rd Guam legislature. Right. But I certainly hope his staff is still able to facilitate that and move that bill forward. It's not a very complicated bill. It's not a very long bill. And I'm hopeful that I don't see any reason why that bill could not be packaged and put for voting and move forward in our session, because trust me, I want to see that bill see the light of day. Again, it comes down to ensuring responsible actions are happening in our government. And when people violate the trust that's been given to them and the opportunity that's been given to them, I don't think we should be rolling out the red carpet to allow them to come back and violate that trust again. So I'm keeping an eye on it, Chris, and thank you so much for asking what the status of it. I'm just hopeful that Senator San Augustine through his committee will move that bill forward and get it on the floor for the next session.
Thank you, guys. Got to run, Kay.
Thank you.
Hey,
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Take care.
We'll eat some fried rice a la mode for you. Don't worry. 9/11. I want to bring on our good friend Tomas Manglotnia of the KUAM news team.